The battle in the Middle East is only intensifying. To talk about that, I have with us Michael Oren. He's a former Israeli ambassador to the US, is also a former member of the Knesset and deputy minister in the Prime Minister's Office for Diplomacy. Mr. Oren, thank you so much for speaking to us, but you've consistently warned for nearly 2 decades about the existential threat of a nuclear Iran. President Trump is now facing mounting challenges as Iran resists negotiations following military escalation and the killing of Ali Khamenei. The US and Israel's bombardment of Iran and Lebanon continues, and also Tehran has continued retaliatory attacks on Israel and US targets. How long do you believe that this war could continue, and what's the ultimate endgame?
Oh, first of all, excellent to be with you. Thank you for hosting me. Listen, 3, 4 weeks, 5 weeks is not beyond possibility. Now, whether that's a long war or a short war, in more recent years in the Middle East, it's actually a short war, not a long war. The war in Gaza, for example, went on over 2 years. So we don't know. The goal, I think, ultimately would be a regime change. That Iran would go back to being what it was before 1979, or even better, being a democratic liberal government that would be at peace with us and peace with its neighbors. Now, unfortunately, that's not in our hands. It's in the hands of the Iranian people. But what the United States and Israel and other allies can do is create the conditions within Iran in which those people could rise up again and perhaps make a political change. When they tried to do this back in January, thousands and thousands of Iranians were massacred by their own government. So they're quite afraid right now. We'd have to deplete that government's ability to suppress the people significantly. Short of that, the goal of the war is to downgrade as much as possible Iran's offensive weaponry, in particular the arsenal, the nuclear facilities. Certainly, many of them were partially destroyed during the war last summer, the 12-day war. But beyond that, it's Iran's ballistic missile capacity. And these missiles are huge. They are about 2,000, 2,500 pounds of TNT. They take down not an apartment building, they take down an entire block, entire neighborhood. And Iran has thousands of these, and they want to get tens of thousands of more. So we have to blow up the missile launchers, we have to blow up the arsenals, and ultimately you have to really destroy the factories that are making these bombs. Many of them are deep underground.
Right. You've also said that Israel does not dictate US policy and that everything is done in partnership. But when intelligence about Iran's top leadership being in one place is directly shared at the highest level, critics argue that this blurs the line between cooperation and strategic steering. Where exactly is that line?
Oh, I don't think it blurs it at all. I think from what I know, by the way, the information really came from the CIA more than from the Mossad. But what I will tell you is the CIA and the Mossad have probably the closest strategic intelligence sharing relationship that both organizations have had with any other foreign government. So, do you hear that? That's an incoming rocket.
Okay.
Goes off on our phones. You're going to hear the siren in a second. I'll try to stay with you as long as I can.
Yes.
We have to go run for a bomb shelter right now. Okay. A little dramatic there. So I don't think there's a blurring of the lines. I think that there's a level of cooperation which actually surpasses the very extensive cooperation which we've had with the United States for many years now.
Right. Mr. Oren, also the theater of conflict has now expanded to India's own neighborhood. Americans have confirmed the torpedoing of an Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean yesterday. This was reportedly in Sri Lankan waters, or at least waters close to Sri Lanka and the international area. And by expanding the theater of war into the Indian neighborhood, isn't America crossing a line here? Because there are clear issues of sovereignty involved that President Trump appears to have no concern about. What is your view?
Well, I don't know where the actual location of the submarine was. Was it in Sri Lankan waters? Was it in Indian waters? Or was it in international waters? If it's in international waters, it's not a violation of anybody's sovereignty. But certainly Iran is trying to expand this war. Why was this submarine there, you have to ask? The submarine there was to interfere with international shipping. And Iran thinks that by blowing up international freighters, perhaps belonging to India, perhaps belonging to Sri Lanka or both of the countries, that those governments then will put pressure on President Trump to end the war.
No, it's actually a US submarine that's blown up an Iranian ship that was coming out of India, that engaged in Operation Milan, if I'm not mistaken, is the name of the exercise, the military exercise, the Navy exercise that the ship was engaged in. So it's an Iranian ship blown up by a torpedo coming in from a US submarine in the Indian Ocean.
Okay, it's interesting to me. I don't know this. But what I've known from what I've read in our press and in the American press, it was closer to Sri Lanka. Didn't know it was part of an exercise. In any case, if it's in international waters, it is an enemy ship. It is an enemy ship, and under international law, that ship is a fair target. So the question is whether that submarine was just on maneuvers, or was it trying to interfere with international shipping?
All right. I'm also asking you this because Israel and US do share close ties with India. India has had close cordial ties with Iran in the past as well, and we've had a large diaspora in the Middle East, and their safety is paramount to us. While India sought de-escalation, do you think the Israel or the United States are in any mood to de-escalate at the moment?
No, they're not. And the fact that that Prime Minister Modi was here on the eve of this war, I think signaled the fact that India very much supports Israel's right to defend ourselves, including against Iran. And I understand that India does have a relationship with Iran, but we understand that Iran is the world's largest state sponsor of terror. It's the largest state sponsor of jihadist Islamic extremist terror. And these are threats which face Israel and India together. And Israel is proving itself to be a very, very powerful regional player right now. And that, to me, redounds certainly in India's interest as well.
Right. Now, I want to draw your attention to some of the contradictions that have been coming out of the statements from Washington, D.C. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on the 2nd of March, we knew there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties. However, President Trump on the 3rd of March says, I think they were going to attack first, and he's talking about Iran. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. What's the real story here? Was this war defensive, forced upon the United States, or preemptive?
Yeah. It's interesting to follow this. You're right. And by the way, even today, Secretary of State Marco Rubio walked back what he had said 2 days ago about Israel being the first to attack and America sort of being dragged along. He walked it back. I think it has a lot more to do with internal American politics than it has to do with the actual reality. But here's the reality, that eventually Israel was going to launch a strike against Iran because Israel could not sit passively. Oh, you hear that?
Yes.
That's an incoming missile. So I may have to take this, I may have to shut this short, I'm afraid. But okay. Israel was always going to act to prevent Iran from getting masses of these missiles that you hear coming in right now in my neighborhood. Because if they had 10,000 of these rockets, we would not be able to defend ourselves. So it was either going to happen then or happen eventually. So in that way, Marco Rubio was right. I'm afraid we're going to have to stop. I'm going to have to run for cover.
All right. Please take care of your health. Please take care. We certainly want you to be safe and secure. Thank you so much for joining us.